If you purchased a home in this area just a few years back, chances are your real estate value has pretty much doubled. But what about the millions of people who are renting? They are beginning to feel very left behind. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to feel that way. I rent an apartment in downtown Toronto, one of the most expensive cities in the world, and I'm definitely not left behind. In fact, I'm ahead of most people my age financially. Now, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying it to illustrate what is possible. And today, I'd like to share a few tips with you about managing your money as a renter and finding the right apartment for you. Now, I'm sure many of you have been told before that renting is just throwing your money away. I'm here to tell you that that's just not at all true. Now, I know the real estate crowd, who's ever watching this video, is going to get really riled up by me saying this, but the fact of the matter is, we have an ever-increasing population of people who feel like they are going to be completely left behind because they cannot access the housing market. Well, I'm hoping I can help change that perspective for you by sharing some of my own insights about how I stack cash as a renter. Perhaps the most important aspect of renting is making sure that your rent is affordable. Now, a great place to start as kind of a blank template for a budget is the 50-30-20 rule. And this rule states you should spend no more than 50% of your spending on needs, no more than 30% on wants, and 20% to go towards your savings. So let's focus on that 50% part. This 50% includes all the necessities of life. So that's going to be your housing costs, your food, utilities, clothing, all of that stuff. But ultimately, it's up to you how you want to split these expenses up. You can, for example, say, okay, you know what? I want to stretch a little bit on my rent and maybe spend 40% of it to live in a nicer place. But then that means you're going to have to cut back on your food, your clothing, and other things. Or you can be a bit more balanced and spend something like 20% on your rent and then leave a nice chunk of money to put towards your other needs. Your rent should never cost more than 50% of your after-tax income. So that means, for example, if you make $36,000 per year after tax, that's a take-home pay of $3,000 per month, which means you should never spend more than $1,500 per month on rent. Now, some of you may be watching this and are like, uh-oh, my rent already is 50% of my income, or maybe even more than that. And I completely understand that. Times are really tough right now. Hey, I mean, when I first moved to the city, my after-tax income was about $38,000, which meant I earned about $3,166 per month. My rent was costing me about $1,500 at the time, so that was almost half my money going to rent. With about another $800 going towards groceries, internet phone bills, essentials, and entertainment, that left me with around $866 per month, which is a 27% savings rate. Now that's quite a high savings rate considering that about half my income was going to my rent, but at a young age, I really spent a lot of time learning about personal finance, and I created financial rules for myself that I mercilessly stuck to because financial independence is a very big goal of mine. And over time, I was able to rapidly increase my income. I got some solid investments going, and then Justine moved in with me, so that cut my rent cost way down, and by that time, I was saving 70% of my income, and my rent was something like 12 to 15% of my income. Remember, our ability to build skills within ourselves can far outpace the rate at which our rent will increase. And also consider the massive impact living with friends, family, or partners can have on your finances. Don't feel left behind. Don't underestimate what can happen in your life in just a few short years if you commit to taking action. Now, a follow-up question you may have is, how do I find an apartment that's going to cost me less than 50% of my income? What if you're struggling to find something that's affordable? Instead of being a butthead and just saying something like, you need to look somewhere else, you need to move, How about something a little bit more pragmatic and helpful? My advice would be that you need to have a very high volume of searches. Oftentimes there are cheap apartments on the market, but they get snatched up really quick, so you need to be on the ball. But how do we do this efficiently? You don't want to be spending 8 hours a day searching for an apartment. Well, that's why I'm happy to say that I've teamed up with Live Rent for this video that they were kind enough to sponsor. Live Rent is a solution for every part of the rental process that totally represents where the future of renting is headed. Rental automation. You can search, apply, sign, and even pay your rent all inside the same platform. Yes, this means no more paperwork, no more 10 different landlords asking you for 10 different forms, credit scores, backup documentation, all this stuff. It's all standardized, all super easy to do. And you can pay your rent by credit cards, which means you can get those sweet reward points every single month. One of the coolest things about this platform is that it automatically groups together multiple listings within the same apartment building or condo building, so that way you can easily see which units are the cheapest without having to dig through a bunch of different ads on some other platform. And also with their super streamlined application process, that means you can apply to a high volume of listings super easily, super efficiently, which gives you a better chance of landing that good deal when they do come up. A down payment for a house requires a minimum of 5%, but usually it's more like 10, 15, or 20%. That's an extremely high barrier entry to a lot of people who are trying to access the real estate market. But you know what doesn't have a very high barrier to entry? The stock market. As renters, we can use the power of the stock market to grow our wealth even with just very small amounts of money. Last year, I did a video about how you can start with $261, and if you stick with investing, you can turn that into $1 million. This is an extremely important part of building wealth as a renter. A homeowner has a mortgage, right? And part of their mortgage payment goes towards building equity in their home. And that acts kind of like an investment pretty much for them. And a lot of homeowners decide to have a mortgage instead of investing their money in the stock market. But as renters, we don't have this mortgage payment that helps us build equity in anything. We need to use alternative forms of building wealth, and the best one to do that is the stock market. Just because we don't own a home doesn't mean that we can't own assets that will appreciate in value. The stock market is extremely accessible today. You can literally get started with just $1 using many of the free stock trading apps out there. So do not be afraid to start small. I have plenty of videos on getting started with investing, so make sure to subscribe if you're new here and check out some of my videos on that topic. What's the one thing in life that makes everything easier? Being attractive. No, I'm not talking physically attractive. I'm talking about being an attractive candidate for a tenant. I think it's important to look at the rental application process kind of like a job interview. Like when you go to interview for a job, you're trying to stand out as the best candidate and put your best foot forward, right? Well, when we're looking for an apartment, we want to take that same approach. We want to appear very desirable, so that way we increase the odds that whatever apartments we apply for, that we're gonna get accepted. The more opportunities you have available to you in the rental market means the better chance you're gonna be able to land that good deal. So how do you make yourself an attractive renter? Well, one of the really cool things about the Live Rent platform is that they have this thing called a renter resume that you can use just like a resume to basically build and then show off to make yourself stand out as a really good candidate. I like this a lot because it saves a ton of time. You just have to fill this out once and then use it to apply to a whole bunch of different landlords and listings. To really stand out as a renter, I think there's 3 main things I would say that you need to focus on. Having a good credit score, having solid references, and having a stable paycheck. Landlords value above all else trustworthiness. So building your qualities that represent trustworthiness, like a credit score, references, and a stable paycheck, will really allow your trustworthiness to shine. Finally, my last tip is about protecting yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, renters get taken advantage of, and they're kind of looked at like second-class citizens compared to homeowners. Particularly in large cities, there's so many stories of people getting outright scammed or treated very unfairly by their landlords. With something that's as expensive as rent, it's so important that we don't fall victim to any unfair practices. That's why I think it's really important for the future of renting to progress towards something that's mainly digital, that's transparent, that's streamlined. For example, LiveRent has a rental history, which you can then reference when you need to. That means everything is transparent. You can see the chats that you've had with your landlord, you can see when you actually signed the lease, you can see the history of payments you made. That way, if there's ever any disputes, you have all the backup you need to protect yourself. And on top of that, when you're browsing through listings on LiveRent's platform, you can actually look for verified landlords specifically, which further adds to the trust of your interaction. So whether they're neglecting to repair something or whether they're trying to increase your rent above the limits set out by law, you are covered. And as a renter, this is really important because we're in a bit more of a precarious situation than a homeowner. We don't actually own the place that we are living. So this leaves us more susceptible to getting taken advantage of or falling victim to some kind of scam or fraud. So you can protect yourself as much as possible by documenting everything and communicating through transparent channels. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video packed with tips about renting an apartment, and let me know if you guys want more content on renting specifically. Thanks again to LiveRent for sponsoring this video. They're quickly picking up steam in the Toronto area, so if you're looking for a place to live in the city, definitely give them a shot. You can check them out linked in the description down below, and they are expanding across North America as well. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.